At the center of this parable is this idea of invitation to a feast. A big, extravagant feast. Celebrating together the goodness of God's family finally being restored. And the elder brother and the younger brother are invited to share in the incredible extravagance and grace of the Father. And that's the invitation that Jesus was making to his original audience, saying, come and find your place at the table, come and sit and dine. Now, the older brother is angry about the cost of this, and he refuses to go in and celebrate, and he's particularly angry about the fact that his younger brother has been included in this. And there's something that you might miss if you don't look in the text, and that is that since the younger brother asked for his share of the estate to be sold and given away to him, he had literally shrunk the share of the family wealth by 1/3. And so only 2/3 of the original wealth remained. And now, for the father to bring the younger brother back into the family, he was also not only reducing his own share, the father was, but he was also reducing the older brother's share. There was no way for the father to bring the younger son back into the family except at expense to the older brother. And the older brother is so angry. Look what you've done, Father. You've taken this son of yours who's squandered our wealth with prostitutes, and you brought him back into the family, and I am suffering for it. It's at my expense. There's something else striking about this parable. In the previous two parables, the sheep is lost. Someone goes out and fetches it and brings it home at their expense. The coin is lost. Someone sacrifices and looks everywhere and searches with great intent for the coin and brings it home, and there's rejoicing. But in the parable of the two lost sons, the younger son is lost, but no one goes out to fetch him. And culturally, it would be very clear who was meant to go out and fetch the younger brother. It was the older brother's job to take responsibility for keeping the family together. The older brother was meant to go out and say, Father, I'm going to go and find my younger brother. I'm going to bring him back into the family at my own expense and restore the dignity and the unity of the family. But he doesn't. Unfortunately for the younger brother, he gets a judgmental, self-righteous, angry person for an older brother. Someone who would never extend that kind of grace to him. But Jesus puts in this parable a really horrible and ungracious older brother so that we could long for a true one. The younger brother needed an elder brother who would bring him back into the family at the cost of his inheritance, at the cost of his wealth. But we had wronged God to such a degree that we needed an elder brother like Jesus who would not just bring us into the family at the cost of his wealth, he would bring us into the family at the cost of his very life. It took nothing less than the death of the perfect Son of God to reconcile the gap between us and God. This was an expensive banquet invitation that we were given. On the cross, the only Son of God, the true elder brother who had perfectly obeyed the Father and was in perfect favor with the Father, the one who could truly say, I've never disobeyed you and everything is owed to me. That Son, he gave up his rights to be a son so that we could become sons of God. On the cross, instead of a royal robe, he was stripped naked. On the cross, instead of a ring on his finger, he was given a crown of thorns. On the cross, he who was a son became a slave so that we who were slaves could be brought into the family and become sons. This banquet was an extravagant act of God's grace, and we only get into it by his gracious love and his gracious invitation. So Jesus is the one who pays the price for us to be part of God's family and to share in this celebration banquet. The picture of heaven in the Bible oftentimes is the picture of a great banquet feast. In Matthew 18, it says that many will come from the east and the west to take their place at the banqueting table, along with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, along with everyone in all history who has ever decided to receive God's extravagant grace. In Revelation, it says that this picture of the end, of Jesus bringing all things together and making a new humanity, is like a picture of a giant wedding feast of God and his people being joined together and celebrating. And the thing about an extravagant banquet hosted by an extravagant host is that we don't get to decide who comes to sit at the table. If we have a problem with who gets invited to participate in the extravagant generosity of the host, we have a problem with the host himself. In fact, the central ritual that Jesus leaves for the new community that he's forming by his grace is a banquet meal, a picture with a cup of wine and broken bread, saying, my sacrifice, as you eat together of the sacrifice, you become one community. And you can't do that by yourself. You can't participate in the grace of God by yourself. You can't be part of a banquet by yourself. It's no banquet at all. How foolish would that be? But so often our picture of spirituality is to go off into our own little corner, to pray really hard and have revelations from God, to pick the people who we want to be part of our world or not be part of our world, to draw all these lines and have a very intense and private and individual spirituality. And God says, no, you can't be spiritual at all if you want to be at a banquet by yourself. I've prepared this extravagant meal because I want all of humanity to dine in it. And oh, it's free, but it's not cheap. It comes at the price of my son Jesus. So maybe you're having another look at your spirituality. If your spirituality takes you away from community into a place where you pick your friends and it gets smaller and smaller, maybe that's no spirituality at all. But maybe in a deeper sense, you're also looking for your place at the table. Maybe, like the younger brother, you would say, there's no way I can be part of God's community of faith. You don't know how much I've done, how badly I've let people down, how I've let myself down, my family down, my God down, how I've walked away and caused offense, and there's no way that I can ever pay those things back. Well, the only way that you can overcome that guilt and that sense of needing to earn your way back in is to just step in and receive God's extravagant grace. He's running out to meet you. He is coming to find you before you can even make your speech of repentance and say, I'm bringing you back in. I'm restoring to you the full rights of a son, the full rights of a daughter. I've always wanted you to be part of my family, and I'm willing to pay the price for you to come in. Maybe, on the other hand, like the elder brother, what's keeping you out of the banquet is that you feel that you've earned the right to be a good person and you don't need God in your life at all. You feel like you're a moral person, a strong person, a righteous person who doesn't need any help. He doesn't need to be vulnerable. He doesn't need to be weak. Who certainly doesn't need salvation. And maybe the language of your heart is, I'm trying so hard, I'm working so hard, and I don't get the good things that are coming to me. God's invitation to you, just like he did for the older brothers, to say, I've always been with you, and everything I have is yours. Come and sit and dine at my banqueting table at my expense. You can't earn your way in here. It's so prideful, it's so foolish. Don't stay outside and stop keeping other people outside. Come in and just receive this lavish gift of my grace to you. The final words of the parable are the words of the Father, where he says, don't you understand? We had to celebrate because this son of yours was dead and now is alive, was lost and now is found. Jesus was urging his original audience to enter into this great celebration of the Father, urging us to find our place at the table, whether we're younger brothers or older brothers, whether we are self-indulgent and self-discovering or self-controlled and self-righteous. We're both lost, and he invites us both to come and dine at his table and be part of the family by his grace. And as you realize that you were a dead person who can come alive through the extravagant grace of Jesus, you were a lost person who can be found by the redemption that Jesus offers you. As you meditate upon those things and you realize that you have the opportunity to sit at the Father's banqueting table and taste of his goodness and his delight and be part of this beautiful community, may that gratitude overwhelm your heart. May it rise into every part of your life and overflow into the world around you and include you in this beautiful thing that Jesus is making, this thing that he calls his church, a community of redeemed people who are brought together to feast on his glorious grace and to constantly give away that grace to the world and make this party bigger and bigger